a long drive from Omaha. Last month, there were a number of people that couldn't quite make it here. It was, if you remember from last month, it was just pouring rain. And luckily here in Lincoln, it didn't actually start raining until about 6:02, right after we started in here, so that was a good thing. And it rained most of the time, and then it stopped right before we were over, so it was really well scheduled. We have a couple more things tonight. Our next reader is Terry Oberst, and then after Terry, of course, we'll have a finale with Tony. And Tony has promised that he will not only play, but he will actually talk. He'll read a few things. He's also a writer as well as being an instrumentalist. So, next person up is my friend Terry Oberst. He has been almost right at 10 years at the helm of the S Street Writers Workshop. That is a great piece of work put together by the Lincoln Lancaster County Mental Health Center with Dean Settle and the crew down there shepherding that into existence about 11 years ago. Terry has been there the whole time. We have a number of other people here from the workshop as spectators and friends of Terry, and I'm glad they're here. It really does fill up the room and makes this into a community experience. It's a lot of fun. Terry started way back when he was about 18 at Brown University, and has, as myself, has gone through 3 or 4 other universities and programs, and eventually got his degree, and has been practicing writing poetry for a long time. He's a great friend of mine, and so I am welcoming up to the microphone Terry Oberst.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. Boy, this is a hard act to follow with Michelle and Adrian and Jay's. But I'm going to try. I'm going to start off by reading a couple poems by my late friend from Oregon, Leonard Sorino. Leonard and I went back to the late 80s when I sent some poetry to his fine little magazine, Semi-Dwarf Review. And they wanted to do a book in 2000, so we did Transcendencies, and then another book in 2008 called Sun. And then in 2013, I did a revision of Transcendencies that refocused the dedication of the poem to Leonard, and I used the same reference that that Eliot used to pound in the wasteland, Il Miglior Fabio, the better craftsman. We exchanged poems for many, many years. Most of the time he'd send me, depending on the season, 15 to 20, and I'd send him maybe 1 or 2. He had like 25 books out, 25 chapbooks, but he was a wonderful person. So I'm going to read 2 poems from The Terrible Wilderness of Self, which was a finalist in the '98 Poetry Book of the Year Award. And then I'll segue into my elegy for Leonard that prefaces Transcendencies, which was published in the Lummox Tribute to Leonard. So here we go. This is called Asylum. One man was so like a dog, he snarled it with his teeth and beneath his lips. Another sang with his toes, and the third stayed quiet even when they beat him. Most of us, like animals, were herded, shocked. A few of us bolted into the terrible wilderness of self. Sometimes a bit of tobacco or candy emerged from a pocket, and the scramble was an ensemble carefully planned, sustained, and punished by the staff. It was just like the world. Economics was based on strength, structure, and greed. Thank you. This is called the Alien. Assuming he walks slowly towards chaos, the man with seed in the loins of his shadow reveals a heart in his chest and crosses the river, swimming. His hair is full of bees and his clothes are made of knives. The mammals that he lived to kill rot in his bowels, and he stinks within the sight of vultures. When he reaches the other side, the sand sinks beneath his toes, and rocks warn that they too can smell his feet. When dusk arrives, his shadow walks between death and light. His superb visions anoint his skull. Thank you. And here is my elegy for Leonard. I was in the regional center in 212 when actually it was Rex who told me Leonard had died, and I thought, at the end of his life, he died, he smoked so much, he died of cancer. I was wondered, was he reaching out to me, and I wasn't there, so I didn't know. So I wrote this elegy for him. It's simply called Leonard, an elegy. And so you are gone now, the creeping malaise of cancer cutting you down in just 5 weeks. At 69, you were the greatest poet I've ever had the privilege to know. Eschewing the academic in one hand, the confessionalist on the other. Every time it was Christmas, you would treat yourself a gift, reading the collected poems of Wallace Stevens. Stevens segueing into no things but in ideas, as opposed to Williams's no ideas but in things, tracing it back to the divergent paths taken by Plato and Aristotle. You love the translations of foreign poets to those of your native tongue, the early and middle Chinese, the French Surrealists, the Russians during the brutality of Stalin, the Middle Europeans, the Spanish poets enduring their civil war, the ancient and modern Greeks. Your Pygmy Forest Press was a mecca for emerging poets. Surely the 2 books you did for me were a testimony to your talent as an editor. Your dear mother, who was in her late 90s, apparently outlived you, whom you took care of 24/7 for years. And Ava, your true love, 12 years together, what will become of her? Will her tears be around, watering the fertile ground, falling on fresh soil? Will anything ever grow without you, Leonard? You are a master gardener, cutting and printing words to fit into your complex forms, your unique modalities. Why you haven't won the Pulitzer Prize in your lifetime is beyond me, even a pushcart denied. Now you've gone to your Calandra, your dearest daughter, whom you did away with when she was a small child, in the throes of your schizophrenia, doing what the command voice told you to do, tearing out your own eye in retribution. I know she has forgiven you, a joyous reunion I am sure of, but I must now speak man to man, poet to poet, because this legacy is for you, my beautiful, beautiful friend, only for you. I'm just going to read these poems without a lot of commentary on them, when there's commentary that needs to do so I can get everything in. So this is called The Old Guard. Stars, the old guard, peer down upon our dark probabilities. Our wings are done. They pass judgment on no one. Their burden of light tumbles down to the hungry like manna. Their faint voices are heard by all the dispossessed on earth, whispering, we're each a light in the darkness. How heavy is this darkness we bear for love of you? Thank you. And this is for Lucy, so on the way home, the old sadness fills my shoes once again as I walk under the street lamps, those clear belts of light, past the mulberry bush that has forgotten my name. How many times have I touched her tender leaves? Down the narrow, bitter street, past the houses on either side of me, their tiny porch lights admit no despair. Despite night's henchmen, I draw near home, some wishbone slowly bending. Oh, whatever is human in me will redeem this dark. Thank you. This poem needs just a little bit of a setup. it mentions clubfoot. Oedipus in Greek meant clubfoot. Oedipus had a clubfoot, so it's called night. Walmart remains closed, but the tiny churches are open so late this evening. I must go and find a place where I can mumble my prayers in private. Sophocles writes of a king who had killed his father and married his mother. Oh, clubfoot, I cannot sleep as the night grows darker and darker. Thank you. This is called Alone. Awake to the sound of traffic through my small window, I do not complain. I drink my first cup of coffee, today will rain. I shower and towel off, I am naked again. But I will not walk out the door until after dusk. I walk into the darkness and I am alone. I walk into the darkness and I am still alone. Thank you. This is called Coins. Oh, destitute, what is your sneer to me? I can pinch pennies as well as any hawker at the county fair. The house I built yesterday has collapsed into itself. Even in Greek tragedy, the hero cannot find a way out through compromise. So go ahead, compromise. But your betrayal is as common as the coins of Judas. This poem began with little snapshots of friends of mine who had died. I was lucky enough to have it published in the Nebraska Presence Anthology with all other great poets. I was very, very privileged. So this is called Death and Company. Well, I've been through all this and it's not my fault. With my face growing smaller and smaller in the mirror, and my eyes like red hornets. It is terrible. I was still a child. And now with the wind raising her dirty skirts, and my blood ticking time to the north, I'll remember that White House on Sailor Street, watching the dump trucks with my grandmother, who was dying in a rest home. Oh, they are all dying, my friends. Tom Pate, long and lanky, a sharp thud on a Canadian football helmet. Mike McCarthy, the rags of the priesthood, ground his slumping shoulders. Marilyn Morrow, face smashed against the dashboard. Tom Bisbee, decapitated on an icy night in December by a derailed train. And I sit in this dark apartment and weep tiny testimonies of salt for a lost shadow in a room full of shadows, until morning climbs down from her apple tree like a friendly child to follow death, a face familiar in the crowd. I'd like to do one poem from Sun here. This is kind of a more humorous poem. It's called What I Asked For in Heaven. I asked for a heaven where a lover of Handel wouldn't be stuck with the Sex Pistols. I asked for a heaven where old Vincent Van would still have his ear, where Starry Night would make ascetics weep. I asked for a heaven where Einstein and Stephen Hawking could stroll arm in arm and discuss first causes with Aristotle. I asked for a heaven where Meister Eckhart had pure semen and Augustine outgrew original sin. I asked for a heaven where all my friends can play football, smoke pot, and dance the funky chicken. Finally, I asked for a heaven where I could have a beer with Jesus and joke about the planks in my eye and gaze at the cross lovingly as it's now become a beautiful apple tree. Said two more here. They're a little longer, but this is called Desert of Nightmares. It's kind of a scary poem, but sometimes you have to write dark stuff. Desert of Nightmares. Yes, I am sicker than I ever could imagine myself to be. With my ticket between my teeth, breathless, I board the rickety old yellow school bus. The driver, that ancient gnome with the toothless grin, skin the texture of sandpaper, says welcome, destination, desert of nightmares. And it was mid-morning when we set out into the sea of sand, not another car on the slash of highway, nothing to be seen but a few cactuses clinging to life in this saddest of wastelands, everything shimmering in the new heat as if underwater. I take a deep breath, the last of the cool air, sweat trickling down my forehead like tiny ants of ice, become drowsy, listening to the steady rumble of the wheels, and submerge into sleep, flowing. It was snowing so hard I could barely see, but they were waiting for me at the side door of the hospital, like grinning hyenas. This, my fourth shock treatment. And they pulled me along like some sort of sacrifice, screaming, no, no. They stripped me down, made me put on a hospital gown, and rolled me into a small white room. I was strapped to a table. The doctor smiled above me like some sort of benefactor and said, relax. I bit down on the mouthpiece, then something went wrong. And in the rush of terror pumped into me by the IV, I could not breathe. My back bucked up and I flung into eternity without breath. And then it was summer. It was golden. I was happy. But I heard a young girl sobbing, having just hung up the phone. He won't marry me, and I'm carrying his child. It was Deanna, naked, stepping into a warm bath, a diabetic coma coming on, saying, it's better this way. She stopped weeping, lay back in the water. I shouted, no, please, no, I love you. As she slowly sank from view, I plunged into a dark cell in the deepest gut of a prison. A voice came to me commanding, bite your finger off, and I didn't hesitate. I put my finger up to my mouth, bit down with all my strength, watched in horror as I ground through the bone and gristle until I severed it and spat it into the scum of the toilet. I awake to my own scream, find that it is dusk, and I'm on an empty bus. But there is a sign outside the window saying, the present, where all sins are forgiven. And as I start the fragile engine of health to leave behind this landscape of nightmare and shadows, the sun slips down from the sad arms of the saguaro. It too is weary, having come a long way. I could be happy with life. Thank you. This is my final poem. It's a funny poem, but the premise isn't so funny. I escaped from the regional center in Lincoln and hitchhiked back to Providence, Rhode Island, where I'd gone to school many years before. And to purify myself, I went 3 days without water and 4 days without food. And that appears in the poem, particularly in the third section. I stayed at the Salvation Army for a couple months, and there's a nod to them here. Just two more things. I mentioned Koresh. I can't remember his first name now, David, I think. Self-styled guru who was deified by his cult, apocalyptic sort of thing. And then in one section I talk about a play which is Twelfth Night, and the quote from Adele it uses from Kid's Spanish tragedy, I'll fit you Hieronymus Matagan. So it's called Hitchhiking for Jesus. 1. I'm hitchhiking for Jesus. Hallelujah. They don't tell you this in school. Pauvre moi. I seem to have lost my car under a mound of straw, shivering with the Bible as talisman in hand. 5 below zero in the midst of mid-Iowa, the rats scurrying in the empty barn. What a yarn I could tell of madness beyond the cross. Escaped from the mental hospital. A true apostle. Don't need a rifle to be a disciple. Koresh made a mess of playing God. I smell the catechism of cowcrop. 2. Morning, the sun smeared across the sky. Got my best thumb forward, self-denied food or drink. The least of the sheep. I stink of mortality. A priest pulls up. I'm a liar if I'm not scared of his collar. Where you heading? He grunted, looking like a leatherneck Marine. I'm hitchhiking for Jesus, gasped I. not wanting to get involved with this latrine of prayers and penances. Each day is a little death for the Lord, he confided. I climbed in, the volts reek of rot-gut gin. Yeah, a little death, I said, trying not to smile. 3 miles and miles later, lunar days, closer to the gate of heaven than I've ever been. Father, forgive my junkyard of sin. The last league of my Hajira, Providence, Rhode Island. I've come to haunt my old haunts, a crowless scarecrow, a hungry ghost. The Salvation Army is my toast to transcendence, not to mention the grunt and gunt of that sacred host to appease the pissing post. God, I finally got to eat a communion, a feast, a famished man's prayer, a yeast of spiritual ho-hos, leavening my spirit. For dessert, no more fasting in the desert, despair. 4. The rain it raineth every day, Shakespeare says in his goofy holiday play. Did Romeo wet his bed? Did Hamlet get laid? Did Lear see Cordelia breathe? I'm madder than any fool. A footstool, kicked. The trick is to survive. I dreamt I died, reborn as the horn of John Coltrane. Yeah, I'll shit ya, Hieronymus mod again. 5. Don't bogart that joint, my friend, I quoted. To Ken, that ultimate 60s had anthem. Give it to me, whined Jean. 10 minutes later, Ted said, you look green. God, I'm higher than a kite. I hope I don't meet Dracula tonight. 6. Round and round and round we go. Where I am now, only my shrink will know. Stuck in a loony bin where Dracula bit. How much longer will I have to put up with this shit? I've met 12 Christ, 3 archangels, Satan, one guy who thought he was Abraham Lincoln. Me who's thinking, no more sinking, and that this wisdom is ransomed by blood. The jewel found in the darkest of feces. Just tell them I'm done hitchhiking for Jesus. Thank you so much. And I get the opportunity of reintroducing Tony Church playing his wonderful guitar and his wonderful music. Thank you so much. And there's some books for sale if you're interested.